The X-Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
I turned 18. We lived in a one-room run-down shack on the outskirts of New Orleans. We didn't have money for food or rent, to say the least. We were hard-pressed. Then Mama spent every last penny we had to buy me a dancing dress. Well, Mama washed and combed and curled my hair, and she painted my eyes and lips. Then I stepped into a satin dancing dress that had a split from the side clean up to my hip. It was red velvet trimming and it fit me good. And standing back from the looking glass there stood a woman where a half-grown kid had stood. She said, here's your one chance, fancy, don't let me down.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is Bob Nichols. Bob is an old friend of the X-Zone. He is a Project Censored Award winner, a correspondent for the San Francisco Bay View newspaper, and a frequent contributor to various online publications. He reports on war, politics, and the nuclear weapons lab in the Bay Area. Bob is writing a book based on 20 years of nuclear war in Central Asia. He is a former employee of the Army ammunition plant. You're encouraged to contact Bob at duweapons@gmail.com. And Bob Nichols, welcome back to the X-Zone. A great pleasure having you here. However, Bob, in all fairness, I wish the circumstances were much different.
Oh, yes, Rob. It's great to be on, and the times are awful.
Oh, Bob, the entire world has been watching what is happening in Japan. Fukushima district of northern Japan has at least 2 troubled reactors. Earlier today, it was learned that the Japanese Tokyo Electric Power Company is planning on, dumping radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean. And I don't know about anybody else, but this scares the hell out of me.
Oh, it's a terrible thing. What they're doing is there's 438 reactors, 442 big reactors in the world. And of course, what they all do is just this. They all leak. They all dump. But they do it in tiny amounts. And what we have here is every couple of decades, we have a reactor or more blow up, and they distribute this stuff in one rush throughout the world, and we are suffering the consequences big time.
Bob, what are the likelihood of the events happening in Japan causing health dangers, immediate dangers to citizens of the United States and Canada on the West Coast?
Well, through the efforts of Dr. Paolo Scampa of Northern Italy, University there, he's a physics professor, we were able to put a number on this. And numbers are always easy for us to deal with because it brings instant understanding. And what Dr. Paolo Scampa has created through years of research and work with official IAEA data is what he calls the lethal doses. And that's just as self-explanatory as it can be. And lethal doses involving the 4 reactors that are immediately involved right now is 70 billion. There are only 7 billion of us. Humans.
Mm-hmm.
Then we count our dogs and animals and cats and horses and things, all life on Earth. But if we restrict it to humans, that means there are 10 of those little lethal doses chasing every single one of us. And they are going first in the Northern Hemisphere. And within a year, they'll be worldwide. So, do you feel lucky today, Rob? Are you going to miss one of the 10 that has your name on it? Little bitty, tiny thing, lethal dose, but it's big enough to have your name on it and those of your family.
Bob, stand by. You and I have to take a commercial break. Food for thought. Bob Nichols is our very special guest this hour, Exonation. We're talking about Japan, the solution to the blown reactors this hour here on the X-Zone with Bob Nichols. I'll give you one of the websites we're promoting for Bob today. It's veteranstoday.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break as the X-Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
It was red velvet trimming and it fit me good. And standing back from the looking glass there stood a woman where a half-grown kid had stood. She said, here's your one chance, fancy, don't let me down.
I used to be a rolling stone, you know. If the cause was right, I'd leave to find the answer on the road. I used to be a heart beating for someone, but the times have changed. The less I say, the more my work gets done. 'Cause I live and breathe this Philadelphia freedom.
Exonation, Bob Nichols is our special guest. We're talking about Japan, the solution to the blown reactors. Here's a couple of websites. www.veteranstoday.com. That's www.veteranstoday.com. And www.sfbayview.com. That's www.sfbayview.com. Bob, why have the Japanese been so secretive or very elusive to the actual amount of problems that they're facing with their nuclear reactors? Wouldn't it be much more advantageous to them to come clean with the world and say, listen, we need your help. We really have a problem here?
Well, governments never do that. Seems like it kind of, it's a rule of thumb. If there's governments involved, you can bet they're going to lie. And what actually happened has never, this particular starter plug has never happened before. And there was although Japan is on a serious earthquake zone, it's called the Ring of Fire, for those of you familiar with it. There was an earthquake, and the magnitude was set at 9.0, one of the 4 largest earthquakes in the past 100 years. And Marion Fulk at the Nuclear Weapons Lab there in Livermore figured it out the way they used to do in the old days, The earthquake had the force, the energy of a 1,000,000 kiloton nuclear weapon.
Wow.
That is, it's 2 trillion tons, 2 trillion pounds of TNT. It's humongous, humongous, all kinds of words like that. And as soon as that thing hit, you can kind of think of it as when you you really slam your hand down on the table and the glasses kind of jump up in the air. Well, think of these reactors lined up in a row, kind of jumping up in the air. And then, pipes started coming loose and whatnot. And of course, with an offshore earthquake, you're always going to have a tsunami, a nice Japanese word. And this tsunami comes, Rob, the thing was 46 feet tall.
Yeah.
And when it overwhelmed those buildings, of course, the reactors had tried to shut down immediately when they sensed the earthquake. They all do that everywhere. They're not very reliable gizmos. And so here comes the big wave. And it carried off, guess what? It carried off the fuel tanks for the emergency power supplies. That means no juice. Here are these reactors that make gazillions of watts of electricity, and there's not a watt to be found because the earthquakes induced tsunami carried off the fuel tanks. Well, of course, the generators kind of started up a little bit. Help y'all appreciate the sound.
Hey, you're doing a great job. I'm impressed.
And then they carried these things off, and that right there is when the clock started. And so these things are without water. I mean, they have water, but the old reactor fuel pools where they stash these things after they're through with them, they're still quite hot. They evaporate water at the rate of, believe this is incredible, 150,000 gallons an hour. So they're just cooking right along. They're melting. They're evaporating all the water. And 90 minutes after that tsunami hit, the reactor's cores started melting. The reactor cores in the fuel pools started melting. Within 3 hours after that tsunami, the meltdown was irrevocable. In 4 reactors, there was no way on Earth or in the universe to stop it. It was a done deal. Of course, immediately all the rich people, governments, and people who had influence knew what was going on worldwide. And the decision was made then not to evacuate Japan. Now, that would mean evacuating 103 million people, but of course they didn't even try. The word, though, of course, got out, and I would love to see a count. Although I don't have it, I would love to, if anybody in Japan wants to send it to me, of the number of Learjets and other private jet aircraft that left Japan in the next few hours. I think that would be a very telling substance about what actually happened in terms of the evacuation that wasn't. Then, within 3 hours, when this thing is really cooking, and the meltdown is underway. I mean, this thing is going to happen.
Right.
All the warnings are going off. The governments are trying to get their act together, figure out what lies to say other than everything is okay. Fine, folks, don't worry about it. We had a little problem, but it's all under control. Well, one of the things that reactors do naturally, I mean, this is just goes along with the whole schmeal, is they make hydrogen gas. They do this naturally. It's part of the deal. And the hydrogen gas is always, when you have a running reactor, the hydrogen gas is always, taken care of. But when you don't have any electricity, you can't very well do that. So the hydrogen gas started accumulating in the tops of these giant barn-like buildings, the reactor buildings. And so the reactor buildings fill up with hydrogen gas, and sooner or later somebody or something makes a spark. Or the gas comes in contact with the white-hot reactor cores, which will be that way for weeks, some for years. And two of those buildings just blew sky high. But some press guy got a picture of across the bay of one of them, number 3, the bad one, when it blew. And I couldn't figure out what it was. I looked at it many times, and I finally figured out that the big thing that was seen to go up a couple 100 feet, do a kind of a lazy pirouette, turn over real lazy-like, and then fall back down to earth. All seemed to be in slow motion. It was in slow motion because it was so big. This thing was huge. It was the roof of the building. And it went up, it turned over a couple 100 feet up in the and then it fell back down to earth, right in the reactor, right into what used to be the building. Of course, it demolished the whole thing.
Right.
And in these kind of reactors, for some reason, the people who designed them and built them, who worked for General Electric, folks, you know, the people who bring good things to life, General Electric engineers put these swimming pools, 40-foot deep swimming pools, for the old reactor cores up at the top of the building. I mean, 4th, 5th floor, we're talking really high. They're right above the reactors. Now, to me, of course, this is years later, that makes about as much sense, as one guy said, as putting a fuel tank for gasoline on top of your engine. I think that's kind of roughly equivalent.
So basically, what happened was when there was no electricity getting into the reactor, the hydrogen that was building up was building a self-contained hydrogen bomb.
It was building a self-contained bomb of hydrogen gas.
Right.
It wasn't an atomic bomb, but it was an enormously powerful chemical reaction bomb, hugely powerful. And when it ignited, oh God! Think of the power. Of course, we could calculate this out. I've been a little busy. The power, that's a good idea. What it takes to push a giant roof of a huge building a couple 100 feet up into the air, kind of give it a twist so that it turns over, and then floats back down to earth. Boom! Lands in the old reactor building, destroying anything that was left of the swimming pools. So that happened in 1 reactor building, 2 reactor buildings. The 3 and 4 reactor buildings were in a bad way, but not quite that bad. So what we have involved is 4 reactor cores that are active and cooking. We have, catch this, 2,800 tons. Tons! That's 5.7 million pounds for those of y'all who are out there trying to work that out. Yeah, 5.7 million pounds of old reactor cores, 4 years worth of stuff. And it's all deciding to come to life. And that's where we have Professor Scampa to thank for letting us know that just what's involved. Forget about the tons and the pounds and the sieverts and the becquerels and all that stuff. 70 billion lethal doses chasing us. That's about the size of it.
In the past, you and I have talked about depleted uranium and how how dangerous it is and how it will never go away. This is just going to add to the DU problem.
Oh, absolutely. This is what do you call it? DU on steroids.
Yeah.
This is the son of DU. This is the stuff that when you first have uranium ore, then you separate out what they think is the good stuff. And you put the good stuff in these reactors or in atomic bombs. They're the same thing. You had the DU that they used then for bullets. And by now, Rob, they used hundreds of thousands of tons. And it's all over the world, especially heavily all over Central Asia.
Stand by, Rob. Bob, you and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Bob Nichols is our very special guest. Exxon Nation, 2 websites, www.veteranstoday.com and www.sfbayview.com. We'll be back on the other side of this news break as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Don't go away.
Hi, this is Eric Rawls of Cosmoverse.com, and you're listening to Rob McConnell in the X Zone.
Hi, this is Blade Runner, and you are listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Hi, I'm Laura Sabrin of Feast to Fields Organic Vineyard in Jordan, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Hi, my name is Lady Ashley, the White Witch of Niagara-on-the-Lake, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal talk radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Stuck on you. Got this feeling down deep in my soul that I just can't lose. Guess I'm on my way. Needing a friend. And the way I feel now, I guess I'll be with you till the end. Guess I'm on my way. Mighty glad you stayed. Stuck on you, been a fool too long. I guess it's time for me to come on home. Guess I'm on.
Bob Nichols is my special guest this hour. www.veteranstoday.com and www.sfbayview.com. Bob, what, if anything, have we learned that we can apply to the present nuclear industry here in the United States and in Canada?
Well, there's 23 of these things just exactly like this in the United States. There's others around the world. These are called General Electric Mark I reactors. They're remarkably, everywhere dumb reactors. And they simply all need to be shut down right now. This is simply this is waiting to happen at other locations. It just needs the right match, you might call it, or the right circumstances, because by far the most powerful weapon on the face of the earth is the earth itself. The earth has, this earthquake absolutely dwarfs anything that humans even imagine to do. 1 million kiloton nuclear weapon is what this thing had the force of. That is, for those of y'all who are trying to figure it out, it's 1.32 times 10 to the 18th joules. Joules, a work measurement. And this is a huge number. Imagine 16 zeros lined up in a row. I think that's a quadrillion, but don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that. I'd have to look it up. It's enormous, and we piddle around with this every single day. The sun, of all things, the sun, a nice fusion reactor, comfortably 93 million miles away, sends to Earth all of the juice that we need. And started off with the solar panels that were on the spaceships, the spaceships that went up there and the satellites that are up there now, they have to have electricity, and they get it from solar panels. So another one of these things is can you believe it, is 35 miles from New York City, 2 of them, and they're like this, and all it takes is 2 square miles of these solar panels to replace these 2 reactors. Getting through the night is not a problem. In fact, the nuclear weapons lab snuck off to Spain to do an experiment where nobody would report on them in the States, and they set up this solar deal, and they also figured out how to capture the heat to get through the night. And there's a town over there of 250,000 people that are just as comfortable as they can be with their solar-generated electricity. And that energy is everywhere, folks. It is simply everywhere. All we have to do is have brains enough to figure out how to collect it and use it. Simple as that.
But obviously,
problem.
Bob, if they've figured out how to use it for satellite electricity as well as the ISS, why can't they use it here on this planet? Or is it because there are so many hands in the pockets of the nuclear reactor advocates as well as in the fossil fuel industry that solar power wouldn't be as profitable for some people as the nuclear as well as fossil fuel is?
Have you ever heard that old expression about if he turned around real fast, it would break everybody's arm who had his hand in his back pocket picking out the money?
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly what would occur. And the people, it's real simple. The people who own and run this planet, this country, every country in the world, they want to make money. And the easiest way to do that is by something that everybody has to do, which, you walk over and you turn on the lights. You don't think anything about it. And you make your contribution to their welfare because they own the electricity. And they own the way to make the electricity. And they have kind of figured out the most expensive, dangerous way possible to heat water. All we're doing is heating water. Heating water to make steam, and so that the steam can turn a turbine, and that's eventually what makes the electricity. It's easy. It's pretty simple stuff. It's easy to do, but it is the most complicated machine on Earth, bar none, are these reactors. And nobody, I sort of know how they work, but gosh, I wouldn't even begin to think I could run one of those things. It's unbelievably complex. Many of them have old submarine operators, guys who, and I suppose gals too, who learned how to run those things on submarines. They are the operators. It's kind of a second job for them, second job opportunity. And they run those things, and they pretty well have it down pat. Of course, nobody allows for a 2 trillion pounds of TNT earthquake just offshore, which makes a tsunami, which carries away your diesel fuel tanks for your emergency generators. What do you do then? You're kind of up that creek,
without the paddle. When looking at this situation in Japan, Bob, do you think that due diligence was taken when the sites for these reactors were established? Didn't they know at the time that these were, number one, on a fault line, number two, that if there was a tsunami, that they were looking at major problems?
Of course they did. Don't let anybody tell you they didn't. Of course they did. They all knew that. But they wanted the money. They wanted the money. And GE was right there with them saying, oh, yeah, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. GE hires these people. They're unbelievable. I call them the monsters of GE. And these people can lie to you, convince you that day is night. And they do it without batting an eye, looking you right in the eye, standing flat-footed. You would never guess that they were lying. But they're really, really good. And of course, the people who owned the land or who bought the land, they wanted to make money. And so it's this personal gain at the public trough that gets us into all this trouble. And this just happens to have 10 of these little bullets for every single human on Earth chasing us down. And a lot of us are going to die. There's no two ways around that. Northern Japan, at least, if not the whole island of Honshu, will be a death zone, should be evacuated for centuries. These things are simply fact. But we humans are really, really good at denial. And we will deny this, and our children will become raggedy, kind of bad copies of us. and the population will go down. See, Japan is already, from the first atomic bombing that they had, their population replacement rate is down below replacement. They're being extinguished. That was before this. Now, Japan is an extinct country. Their people on that island will have no descendants after a few generations. This is a game for all the marbles, folks. This is not a fake game. This is real. And it's as real as it can get because it's about extinction.
So how come the governments of the United States and Canada aren't waving the red flags and saying, hey, we've got a major problem here, gang?
What they did after Chernobyl, it's really amazing. What they did after Chernobyl, they all got together and they said, oh, we got trouble. We have got to figure out how we can explain away the next one. And they devoted all of their time and energy into writing down and figuring out and focus group testing all of the things that we are hearing now on the big radio and television stuff. I want to congratulate you, Rob, for having me on and other people like me on and getting this out. It is something that there will millions of us will be able to hear this. Of course, it won't be enough, but millions and millions of people will know exactly what's going on. And maybe we can make a difference. Maybe we can't. It's kind of a roll of the dice, you know. But the people that were supposed to be taking care of us weren't. They were taking care of GE. And what they were studying was how to try to explain this away, because they knew it was going to happen. They just didn't know where or how. But they knew it was going to happen. And so they were ready to go with their glib pronouncements. Also notice that they have raised the, quote, allowable radiation limits.
Yep.
And what the IAEA did was that they came into Japan real quick. They studied the thing, and they said they advised Japan's nuclear agency to double the limits. They doubled the limits. The IAEA pronounced everything as cool. No health effects involved. Left town on the 30th. On the 31st, there was a huge eruption of radiation in Japan that's 10 times bigger than any previous day. That will be getting to us about 9 or 10, be about the, if you add it up, be March the 42nd, which would be April the 11th, or April the 12th. Be getting to the States and also to Europe. Then it'll take about a year to filter down to the Southern Hemisphere. So we're all involved, all of us.
What effect will this have upon the population, Bob?
It will reduce the population two ways. One, it will kill off older people and susceptible people, people who are not very healthy and strong. And two, the slaughter has already started of the most defenseless, the young ones. Those people that were unfortunate enough to conceive a child, whether wanted or not, around March the 11th, there's a very high likelihood that that child will be deformed in some way. Already, fetuses and miscarriages, fetuses that have been miscarried and zygotes that are just flushed away, that's way increased. You know that from previous occasions. And 9 months from now, there will be a whole lot of deformed children born that were not deformed enough to abort, to spontaneously abort. It's called a natural abortion. And then there will be, Dr. Chris Busby of the UK has already estimated that in Japan alone, there are already 500,000 extra cancers starting in the northern part of Japan.
Could this be looked at as, and I don't really want to use these words, but I feel I must, could this be part of controlled genocide?
Well, it's going to work out that way, whether it was planned that way or not. The result is the population is reduced two ways: by an increased death rate and a reduced birth rate. That is population reduction. That's the only way you can make it happen, other than being like Attila the Hun and just cutting everybody's throat in town. And he would go across Asia and Europe and do that to whole cities. Well, this is population reduction big time through a nuclear chemical means that really wipes out the youngest amongst us, little children, and hastens the death rate of older people. Oddly enough, or maybe uniquely, the most radiation resistant people are adult males. Can you believe that? And so all of the radiation dangers are written in terms of adult males. So anytime you see a radiation statistic, you can figure it's for big guys who are 30, 40, 50 years old, higher. Not for children, not for women, not for pregnant women. They get slaughtered.
Bob, stand by. You and I have to take our final break. Bob Nichols is our guest this hour. VeteransToday.com and sfbayview.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Guess I'm on my way.
The beat goes on. The beat goes on. Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the brain. La-da-da-da-dee, la-da-da-da-da. Charleston was once the rage, History has turned a page, The miniskirt's the current thing, goes on.
Exonation Bob Nichols is our guest. Here's a couple of websites: veteranstoday.com and sfbayview.com. Bobby, you sent me some photos here, and I'm just going to pull them up. And Exonation, if you'd like to get a copy of these photos, just send me an email. I'll be glad to send you a link. These are, these are high-res photos of the nuclear power plant. And Bob, going through this, the just looking at these high-res photos, you can see the amount of devastation, and my God, this is like total chaos.
Oh, yeah, these things are totally destroyed. These are giant buildings.
Yeah.
You would call them cavernous, and they're just totally blown away. They're just nothing left but sticks.
Totally different than the photos you see on the news.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Totally
different.
You
see these nice, pretty little reactors all lined up in a row. Well, they're all lined up in a row, all right, and 4 of them are destroyed. But the other 2 that are by the 4 that are destroyed have hundreds of people that work at them. And that's what that latest article I did. It says, honey, are you going to work today in the forbidden zone? I mean, that's it. If you go to work, you die. If you don't go to work, you let your friends and neighbors down. So what do? And everybody in the X-Zone Nation watching and listening today can say, would you go to work? Would you go to work and protect your country? Would you go to work and die? They've already found 2 people who did go to work. They were overcome by the radiation and they died inside. Found them later. what working there now means rushing in for a few minutes, turning a screw or turning a knob, and then rushing out so you don't get too much at one time. You are going to die within a couple of months. You're called the suicide squads. And the other 8 reactors that are close by, these things are within 10 kilometers or 6 miles. These people are faced with the same choice because they're inside the reactors or inside of the evacuation zone. These things require constant attention to keep the water up. And, of course, that's not going to continue. So the question that we have today as a world, all of us, is what are they going to do about these other 8 reactors? They are destined to fail. They are destined to melt down. And the only thing we can do is concrete those suckers over. Just drop, you have to use aircraft. Drop concrete and what they call boron. Concrete, boron, water, boric acid, and sand on them, and Chernobyl them. Because there's 4 Chernobyls that have already happened. One of them is plutonium, so it counts as more, but nobody really knows. There's quite a few.
Hey, Rob, I hate to do this, but you and I have just run out of time for tonight. I want to thank you so much for joining us. Exo Nation, Bob Nichols, a very special guest here on the X Zone. Check out these websites, veteranstoday.com and sfbayview.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.